This is the drill press. We use it to drill holes into larger pieces and also drill larger holes. We can use a hand drill, but most of the time the accuracy on it isn't as good as a drill press because we know that this is going straight down at a 90 degrees angle. Also, there's a lot more power in a drill press than there is in a hand drill. When we are drilling larger holes, it's really important to use the drill press because the hand drills just are not powerful enough for it. So with the drill press, some safety precautions to take when you come up to the drill press. Make sure that your hair is up. If your hair gets caught into the drill press, it doesn't care and it'll just continue to go. It doesn't realize that your hair is caught in it. So you need to absolutely make sure that your hair is up and out of the way. Safety glasses are on. Things can go flying, sawdust, things like that. So you definitely need safety glasses on. And then another super important thing is flowy sleeves or bracelets. So because you're working kind of right here, if anything is dangling down, it can get caught in that blade. And again, that blade will continue spinning until you hit the off button. So it's super important to make sure that everything on your person is taken care of and tied in and ready to go because, again, the drill press doesn't know what it's drilling into, so it's not able to stop. Okay. The on and off switch are up here. They're just buttons. So the green button is to start it. The red button is to stop it. This changes the speed on the drill press, so how many RPMs it's going at. And RPMs is rotations per minute. So the higher the number, the higher RPMs. So the lower the number, the lower the RPMs. This is important to pay attention to when you're drilling different kinds of materials with different sized holes. And it actually has a chart up here that you can kind of read. So like if I were drilling hard steel and I was drilling through at a 1/16 of an inch with drill bit, I would want to set this to 3,000 RPMs. RPMs for this class aren't super important to know about because I typically have this set to the correct RPMs for drilling wood with the specific drill bit that we're using. So we don't ever really need to adjust the drill's RPMs. In fact, we should never really be messing around with the speed. This right here, it changes and moves the drill bit up and down, so it moves it into your material. There is what we call a depth stop on this. So this is a ruler, and then there's a pair of nuts here, and that stops it at a certain depth. So I can't go any further down than that. It would stop drilling at that point. So this is super important when we want uniform holes in our piece. So we would set this to a specific depth and then drill them all at that depth. So I'm going to slowly let this back up, and you definitely don't want to just let go of it because then it'll just go flying. So you really want to go slow when you're letting go of this. Most of the time though, you'll hold on to one and spin it like this. So you kind of do this, and then you get to down where you need to drill, and then you'll bring it back up. Like that. So again, don't just let it go and let it fly. When you are drilling a piece of wood, there are a couple of different ways you can go about this. So sometimes we just hold the piece of wood on the table and just drill straight down, and there's really not much more to that. We just hold it, drill it down. Sometimes we take a clamp and we'll clamp it to the table. So we'll take a blue clamp and just clamp this right down the table, make sure it's nice and secure, and then this doesn't move around all that much, but we'd still want to hold it while we drill into it. And then the other option is to take one of these blue vices and put our piece in that vise. My piece is actually too large to go in this vise, so I wouldn't be able to use this. When you're drilling smaller pieces that you really shouldn't be holding on to. The next thing I want to talk about is the different types of drill bits. So there are 4 different types of drill bits that I have, and most of the time we'll use 2 of them more than the others. So this is a spiral bit, and it just has a spiral in it, and that's why it's called that. It's a self-cleaning bit, so whenever you're drilling, it comes out of the top and it cleans itself out. This is used for deeper holes and smaller holes. This is majority of the time the type of bit that we're going to be using. The other bit that we'll use is what we call a Forstner's bit. So this is what the Forstner's bit looks like. It has some teeth and it is thick here, and it is not self-cleaning, so it can get stuck in your wood, so you would have to clean it out multiple times as you're drilling. This is used for bigger holes, so this is a 1-inch bit. We use these for larger holes and to get nice clean holes. The other type of bit we have is a hole saw bit. This is for typically large holes. So this would be your material stays in a circle and it goes inside of here, and then there'd be a hole in the middle from this drilling out, and then these outside teeth drill into the wood and cut it up that way. When you're using a hole saw bit, you definitely don't want to just be holding onto the piece. You want to secure the piece down. I'm going to show you how to drill with both the Forstner's bit and the spiral bit. So this is the Forstner's bit. This is a 1-inch Forstner's bit, and so something that's really important about this is making sure that you're cleaning the material out. Also, because it is such a big blade, you want to make sure that we're not dulling it, so you want to make sure that there's wood underneath of here, or there's no metal, basically. So what that can look like is clamping a piece of scrap wood to the table underneath of your piece. So I could just take this piece and clamp this piece down. And then I can kind of use this piece to drill into, so I'll put my piece that I'm drilling on top, and then once I start drilling into this, I'll pull out, and then I will have a nice clean cut on this. When you are drilling, typically you want to know exactly where you're drilling into, and to mark that, we usually use intersections. So think of math class with graphing, they kind of look like an X. So I'm going to draw a intersection here. And I am doing this with marker just so that it's easier to see on the camera, but don't ever use marker to mark up wood, as it bleeds into the wood and is extremely hard to get out. So I just use marker to have it visible for the camera. So that's where my intersection is. I would want to put the point of the drill bit right on where they intersect. When you're operating the drill press, you should always operate the machine with your right hand and hold your material with the left hand. So I'm never going to operate with my left hand and hold with my right. Should always be operating the machine with my right hand and then holding my piece of wood with my left hand. So I am going to show you how the Forstner's bit works and what that looks like when I'm drilling into my piece of wood. So I did not drill the whole entire way through. I ended up drilling partially the way through, so that's why you still see part of that wood there. So when I was drilling, I went up and down, and that was to make sure my bit didn't get stuck in my piece of wood. If it does get stuck in your piece of wood, immediately turn the machine off so that it can't spin the piece around on the bit. It is extremely hard to get that piece of wood off the bit once it does get stuck. So do everything you can to make sure that it's not getting stuck. So I'm going to change this Forstner's bit out for a spiral bit to show you how to drill with a spiral bit. And I'm going to talk about the chuck and the chuck key. So this is the chuck key and this is the chuck right here. This is the most common way that injuries happen with the drill press, other than flowy things being caught into the drill bit. And that is the chuck key being left in. So this chuck key goes right in that hole like that, and then these teeth line up with these teeth, and I can spin this and use that to basically unlock this drill bit. If you notice, that chuck key is staying in there without my hands touching it, without me holding it in. And the biggest safety thing that can happen basically is that key being left in there and then turning the machine on. This won't stay in there once it's spinning at 2,000 RPMs. this will come flying out. It's a big hunk of metal and it'll hit you or somebody else. So that is the most common way that injuries happen with the drill press, is the chuck key being left in there and then flying out. So most of the time you aren't going to be responsible for changing out drill bits, so there shouldn't be chuck keys left in there. However, if you walk up to the machine and this is what you see, you absolutely need to take that out, put it aside before you turn the machine on. So it's important to be checking the machine for a chuck key, even if you haven't changed the bit. So just to ensure that nothing is going to come out and fly and hit you. I do also have a safety chuck key. So the safety on this is that has a spring-loaded system inside, and I cannot get this to stay inside of there. It will pop out. So even if I try to let it in there, it'll just fall out, but I can still use it to take my drill bits in and out. Most of the time this is the one I use, just so that I don't even have to worry about it. It's automatically coming out and I don't have to worry about leaving it in there. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one out and then put the spiral bit in. So I just twist the chuck key until this piece loosens up and falls out. Then I'm going to take my spiral bit and put it in, and then I'm actually just going to hand tighten my chuck because there needs a lot to come down on. This is a way thinner bit than my Forstner's bit. Once it's on there a little bit, then I can take my chuck key and tighten that up the whole way. I want to make sure that my drill bit is inside of those teeth evenly, so these 3 teeth on the spaced around this drill bit. And then I also want to make sure that I have enough of my drill bit inside of the chuck, and also my drill bit is in there straight. Make sure it's tight, and then once that is tight, I should be good to go. So again, similar ways to hold down the piece of wood when you're drilling with a spiral bit. Have a piece of scrap wood underneath to drill into, or use a vise, or just hold it with your hand. So I'm just going to keep my piece of scrap wood there, and then I need to mark an intersection so I know where to drill. So I'm just going to mark an intersection right here. Most of the time this would be measured out and we would be doing this exactly in the spot that we would need. But for purposes of this video, I'm just marking it out in a random spot. So I'm going to line this up. I lined it up with the Forstner's bit while the machine was on. You can always line it up with the machine on, but sometimes it is easier for beginners to line this up with the machine off, just in order to see exactly where that point of the drill bit is going. Most of the time you can see where the point is even when the machine is on, but sometimes it's just harder. With this drill bit, I can just go straight down until I've drilled through my piece. And a good rule of thumb for knowing that you've drilled the entire way through your piece is you can feel a release of pressure when you go through that first piece of wood, and that's how you know you've drilled through the entire piece. It is a good rule of thumb to just have a piece of scrap wood underneath, even when you're using a spiral bit, just so that you have something to drill into if you're going the entire way through your piece. If you're not going the entire way through your piece, it's okay to just set that right on the metal and drill it that way. A couple more things to talk about. The drill bit gets hot. When you drill a bunch of holes, it starts to get hot because there's a lot of friction going on. And so that just means we never want to touch the drill bit. It's also got sharp blades on there, so we can potentially cut ourselves. So we want to make sure that we're never touching the drill bit or grabbing a hold of the drill bit, and we're keeping our hands away from the drill bit as much as possible. Secondly, after a bunch of people have drilled, or even one person has drilled one hole, there's a buildup of sawdust on the table. You want to make sure that this is cleared off, and you should use a hand broom to clear the shavings off. That way you're not blowing a bunch of dust everywhere, and then also if you're brushing it with your fingers, you could potentially get splinters in your fingers, and that can also hurt. So you want to make sure you use a brush, and it's important to clear the sawdust or the shavings, because if there's a bunch there, this can potentially sit up a little bit or sit uneven on here. We can kind of see that a little bit. So it is important to make sure that you're clearing everything off and you have a nice flat surface to set your piece of wood on.